I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not with a billionaire husband on my arm. Not with two little miracles calling me mommy. And definitely not with every single person in that room choking on their champagne. But life has a funny way of flipping the script, especially when the man who threw you away is now the one too afraid to speak. Callum Whitaker had invited 300 people to his company's IPO celebration/baby shower. It was a 2-for-1 event, launching his startup on the NASDAQ while celebrating the child he was finally blessed with through his new fiancée, Lauren. He didn't invite me. Why would he? To him, I was the ex-wife who'd failed him, the barren woman who couldn't give him a legacy, the embarrassment he'd quietly erased from his story, and, if we're being honest, from the company I helped him build. I hadn't been back in San Francisco since the divorce. For 18 months, I disappeared. No social media, no contact, no announcements. So when I walked into that private event at the Four Seasons, dressed in white satin and flanked by 2 toddlers, one girl with my eyes, one boy with the jawline of the man who actually loved me, every glass in that ballroom froze mid-air. I saw him, Callum, standing near the stage, surrounded by investors. One hand on Lauren's very pregnant belly, his face drained of blood the moment he recognized me. And when his eyes dropped to the children beside me, I swear I saw his knees buckle. Good, because this wasn't revenge. This was truth. I took my time crossing the room. My daughter, Amelie, held my hand tightly while her brother, Leo, gripped the hem of my blazer with his tiny fist. They looked like magazine covers come to life, matching linen sets, curly blonde hair, polished little loafers. Picture perfect. My perfect. "Mommy, are we getting cake?" Amelie asked loudly. Dozens of heads turned. Gasps, murmurs. One woman actually dropped her phone. Lauren saw me next. She tilted her head in confusion, like a dog hearing an unfamiliar sound. Then her eyes widened, then narrowed, then landed hard on Callum, whose lips hadn't moved since I entered. I smiled at her. She didn't smile back. A man with a clipboard rushed over. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you with the Peterson Group?" "I'm not," I replied, flashing him the invitation Lauren had unknowingly sent to my old apartment, addressed to my maiden name. But I was personally invited. It wasn't a lie. Callum just hadn't known what he was inviting. And now here we were, at the biggest moment of his career, at the beginning of my legacy. Grayson arrived moments later. Tall, poised, quiet strength in every step. He wore a navy suit tailored within an inch of its life. His silver wedding band matched mine. He bent down to pick up Leo and whispered something that made our son giggle. Whispers spread across the room like wildfire. "Is that Celeste Morgan?" "I thought she left the country." "Wait, is she married to—" "That's Grayson Hart, the billionaire." Correct on all counts. Lauren finally made her move. She walked toward me in a tight pastel dress that strained at the seams. "Celeste," she said with a forced smile. "What a surprise." "Oh, Lauren, you look full," I said sweetly. "Glowing. Congratulations." She didn't respond, just glanced at the kids. "These are—" I crouched down beside them. "This is Amelie, and this is Leo. They're beautiful. Thank you. They take after their father." Her smile twitched. "And your husband is—" I stood and turned slightly to reveal Grayson, who had now joined us. His arm slipped easily around my waist. "Right here," I said. "Lauren, was it?" Grayson said warmly. "Congratulations on your little one." Her face froze. Thank you." She turned back to Callum. He still hadn't moved. Grayson leaned in and kissed the top of my head. "Are you ready?" he asked me. "Almost," I replied, because I wasn't done. Not yet. There were still people in this room who didn't know what Callum had done to me. Still people who believed his version of the story. The one where I was the problem. The one where I was broken. The one where I didn't deserve the company I helped him build, or the family he said I'd never have. But tonight? Tonight they were going to hear the truth, and not from a rumor. From me. You built your empire by burying me, Callum, I whispered under my breath. Tonight I dig myself out and bury your lies instead. The first time Callum said, maybe we rushed into this baby thing, I was injecting myself with fertility hormones on our bedroom floor. I remember the sting of the needle more than the words, but not more than the silence that followed. I looked up at him, this man I had loved since I was 24, expecting comfort, explanation, even just decency. What I got was strategy. Maybe we need to take a break, not just from trying, from each other. That night, I slept on the same bed where we'd once dreamed about baby names and nursery colors, alone, bloated, and shaking with hormones that burned like acid in my bloodstream. Callum moved out 3 days later. He said he needed space, that we were drifting apart, that maybe we were incompatible long-term, but what he really needed was freedom from me, from my body, from my grief, from the guilt he refused to own. For 3 years, we'd tried to conceive. Or rather, I had tried. He scheduled the appointments. I went to them. He bought the ovulation kits. I peed on them. He said we were in it, together. But I was the one taking pills that wrecked my hormones, tracking every basal temperature shift, hiding blood-stained underwear after another failed cycle like it was contraband. His mother whispered at every holiday dinner. Still nothing? That's a shame. Maybe it's Celeste's side of the family. And Callum would just shrug, say, we're doing what we can. You know how emotional these things make her. These things, me. My body had become a public problem Callum had to manage, like bad press or a delayed product launch. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that the real delay wasn't in my body. It was in his truth. When the divorce papers came, they weren't just cold. They were calculated. 37 pages. One clause said I was voluntarily forfeiting any claim to intellectual property developed post-marriage. Another said I was not entitled to retroactive equity due to mental strain during the latter period of the marriage. In other words, you're too broken to contribute, but not too broken to destroy. Callum had rewritten the story. I was unstable. I was emotional. I was obsessed. And most of all, I was barren. So when he left me, he wasn't abandoning a wife in pain. He was escaping a liability. The company we co-founded, Modula, launched 6 months after he moved out. He made the Forbes Under 40 list. Lauren began showing up in launch event photos. The new chapter. The miracle family. The CEO with a second chance. They called her his anchor. They called me nothing. I remember the night I found the truth. I'd switched clinics. I needed new blood work to rule out endometriosis before starting over. When Dr. Evelyn Shaw pulled up my chart, she furrowed her brow. Looks like we already have recent test results for you. Less than a year old. Ordered by Callum Whitaker? My heart stopped. It says here you have above-average ovarian reserve, excellent hormone balance, no reproductive issues whatsoever. She turned the screen toward me like it was good news. But all I could hear was Callum's voice in my head. Maybe you're just not built for this. I left the clinic shaking. I'd spent 3 years thinking I was broken, that I'd failed him, that I'd failed myself. But Callum had known. He'd known I wasn't the problem. He had the results, and he hid them. You want to know the cruelest part? Not that he left me, not that he married someone else, not even that he stole my equity and painted me as unstable. It's that he could have told me. He could have said, it's not your fault. He could have freed me from the shame. Instead, he weaponized my silence. He let me cry on the bathroom floor and whispered, it's okay, we'll keep trying, while knowing the truth was already sitting in his inbox. It took me weeks to say anything to anyone. I lived on instant noodles and guilt. My sister Renee flew in and found me sleeping on a pile of donation clothes because I'd sold the bed to pay rent. You didn't just lose a marriage cell, she said. You lost yourself in it. She was right. But what none of us knew at the time was that I had gained something too. Something growing quietly inside me. Something no one, not even Callum, could take away from me this time. I was 7 weeks pregnant. And I hadn't told a soul. Not even the man who would soon become my husband. Not even the father of my children. Because first I had to rebuild the woman I used to be, before I became the weapon Callum never saw coming. Pregnancy wasn't supposed to feel like this. Not in silence, not in fear, not in the shadow of a man who had spent 3 years convincing me my body was broken. But when the test turned positive, when those 2 faint lines appeared on the stick, I didn't cry, I didn't even smile. I just stared at the result like I didn't believe it. Because part of me didn't. How could this body, this wrecked, depleted body, be carrying life? How could something so impossible feel so quietly true? You're 7 weeks along, Dr. Evelyn said gently. Healthy heartbeat, strong placement, and with your history, this is nothing short of a miracle. No, it wasn't a miracle. It was proof. Proof that I had never been the problem, that I had always been whole, and that Callum had stolen years of motherhood from me, not biology. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my sister Renee, not my lawyer, not even the few friends who'd stuck around after the divorce. I wasn't ready to share the news, because part of me was afraid it would get taken from me too. So instead of celebrating, I got to work. Not on a nursery, not on baby names, on me. I moved out of the city and into a small guest house behind Renee's rental property in Napa Valley. It was quiet. Too quiet at first. The kind of quiet that makes you confront every version of yourself you've ever tried to forget. I spent the first month sleeping too much. Or not at all. The second month rereading every email, every calendar invite, every time Callum had said, "Let me handle it." By the third month, I wasn't crying anymore. I was documenting. I started compiling timelines, backups, files. I created a secret folder labeled, "If They Ask Why I Left." But the truth was, I hadn't left. I'd been pushed out, erased. And now, I was going to build a new story, one where I was the main character, not the cautionary tale. I took a consulting gig for a startup in Oakland, just 4 hours a week, enough to get my brain moving again. The founder was 26, brilliant, and completely overwhelmed. He needed help refining his pitch deck and strategy. I helped him raise $600K in 8 weeks. Word got around. Suddenly my inbox wasn't so quiet. I never advertised, never bragged, never said my last name. I was just Celeste, no Peterson, no Whitaker, just me. And it was enough. That's when I met Grayson Hart. Not at some romantic brunch, not at a party, not even on purpose. He was an early-stage investor reviewing a pitch I'd helped a founder prep. He asked a sharp question during the Zoom. I answered without blinking. Later, he asked the founder who I was. They didn't know much. Just that I was Celeste, the secret weapon. Grayson sent a 1-line email. Subject, coffee? Body. I have questions, and a good espresso machine. I almost didn't respond. But something about the tone, curious, not entitled, stayed with me. We met 2 days later. He didn't know about Callum. He didn't know the grief I carried. But he saw me, loved me. And when I got pregnant with his children, naturally, easily, beautifully, he held me like I was the beginning of his forever. We weren't a fairy tale. There was no magical transformation overnight. But there was honesty. There was calm. There was room for me to breathe again. And when Amelie and Leo were born, one girl, one boy, screaming and perfect, I didn't cry right away. Not until I held them. Not until I whispered, "You were never the problem." And neither was I. 3 months later, Grayson proposed. It wasn't flashy. Just a quiet question on a quiet night while I was feeding the twins and wearing mismatched socks. "I don't want to complete you," he said. "I want to build with you." I said yes, not because I needed saving, but because I didn't. By the time our wedding photos reached social media, Callum still thought I'd disappeared. But I hadn't vanished. I'd risen. And what he didn't know, I wasn't done, not by a long shot. It began with a call I almost didn't return. "Hi, Ms. Morgan. This is Dr. Evelyn Shaw. Just following up on your request for medical records. And yes, as you suspected, your ex-husband, Mr. Whitaker, did authorize and intercept your results. We have full documentation of that if needed." My heart didn't beat faster. It paused. Then she said something that would change the rest of my life. "Celeste, based on your test results from that period, you were never infertile. In fact, your fertility markers were exceptional for your age." I didn't speak because there was nothing to say. He knew. Callum knew. For 3 years, while I begged God for a child, injected myself with hormones, and cried silently into pillows, Callum already had the answer. I wasn't the problem. But letting me believe I was, that was useful. Useful to keep me small. Useful to keep the narrative. Useful to justify his exit. Because no one blames a man for leaving a broken wife. But what if that wife was never broken? What if she was just being manipulated? I requested everything. The lab results. The login logs. The signatures. And buried in the paperwork was one small note Callum had handwritten to the clinic. "Due to emotional instability, please direct all communications to husband. Patient has trouble processing results rationally." Emotional instability. He didn't just hide the truth. He institutionalized the lie. He created a paper trail that painted me as unstable, irrational, unable to handle medical updates about my own body. That's why the nurses treated me like glass. That's why no one ever looked me in the eye. That's why Callum controlled every calendar invite, every appointment, every result. And then I found something worse. I wasn't the only one tested. Back in our second year of trying, the clinic had also conducted a full fertility analysis on Callum. Hidden in the archive section of our joint file was a 6-page report with his name at the top. Low sperm count. Reduced motility. Abnormal morphology. Diagnosis: male factor infertility. Dated 10 months before he asked for the divorce. He had known the entire time. But instead of being honest, he blamed me. He let me medicate myself. He let me hate myself. He let me cry in public bathrooms while strangers consoled him. But that wasn't even the worst of it. I looked deeper, because something never made sense. Callum had always insisted on being in charge of fertility scheduling. He was the one who tracked my ovulation. He read the tests. He decided when we would try. And looking back now, the timing was always just a little off. A day late, 2 days too early, just enough to miss the window. Then I remembered the time he accidentally bought expired ovulation kits. The times he said, "Let's skip today, you look tired," when I was ovulating. The business trips that always landed right on my most fertile week. I went back through the logs. He had been tracking false data. He was sabotaging conception, deliberately, while I blamed myself. There's a word for what he did. Reproductive coercion. It's a form of abuse. It's when one partner secretly interferes with the other's ability to get pregnant, or not, without their knowledge. It's psychological warfare, it's medical fraud, and in many states it's illegal. I sat in the quiet and stared at the stack of papers. The test results, the emails, the scribbled notes, the lies. Callum didn't just lie to me. He built an entire identity for me based on a lie, and then convinced the world it was real. His family, our friends, even my own parents. Everyone thought I was the sad, barren wife, the one who couldn't give her husband what he needed, the reason he had to move on. But now I had receipts. Now I had clarity. And with clarity came something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Grayson found me that night. Papers scattered across the dining table, laptop open, eyes wide but steady. He didn't ask questions. He just poured tea, sat beside me, and said, "Whatever this is, you're going to win." I looked at him, then looked at our twins sleeping in their bassinets. He made me believe I'd never be a mother. "You're not just a mother," Grayson said. "You're their protector, and your truth is bigger than his lies." I used to believe that healing meant forgiving him, but now I know better. Healing meant exposing him, and that time was coming faster than he ever expected. Revenge is a sharp emotion. It burns, it tempts, it screams now, strike now. But I wasn't interested in burning Callum. I wanted to bury him. Quietly, legally, permanently. He had spent years curating a story. She was unstable. She obsessed over pregnancy. She couldn't give me a family. I had no choice but to move on. He told it so often, with such sincerity, even I started to believe it. But now I had evidence. Medical records, tampered ovulation logs, doctored clinic notes, all tied together in a neat little folder called The Lie That Built Him. Still, evidence means nothing unless it's seen. So I made a list. Step 1, protect my children. Grayson and I met with our legal team. Not just for custody, Callum was no threat there, but for future proofing. We drew up airtight documentation confirming Amelie and Leo's paternity, Grayson's children by DNA and law. We added guardianship protocols, trust structures, sealed medical records, digital security barriers. My children would never be a weapon. Not against me, not by him, not by anyone. Step 2, reclaim my voice. I wasn't going to do interviews, no viral tell-all, no trending hashtags. But I did buy a domain, CelesteMorgan.com. I hired a ghostwriter, a quiet, brilliant woman who once worked in crisis PR. "You're not a scandal," she told me. "You're a movement, and your silence is costing you." Together, we began crafting essays, not about Callum, but about control, coercion, recovery. Stories with just enough detail to whisper truth without pointing fingers. Each article ended with one line. "This story belongs to too many women. Let's take it back." The inbox exploded. Women from all over the country shared their experiences. Some were like mine, some were worse. I wasn't alone. I never had been. Step 3, build something bigger. The consulting work had grown. More founders, more deals, more capital. Grayson and I quietly launched a new venture fund, Archerize, specifically for women rebuilding after loss, divorcees, domestic violence survivors, single moms starting over, women who had been erased by men who got standing ovations for moving on. You don't just need capital, I told our first portfolio company. You need someone to believe your story again, until you can believe it too. Within 6 months, we'd backed 11 companies. 3 hit profitability. 1 made the cover of Fast Company. No one knew the woman behind it was the so-called infertile wife Callum left behind. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Step 4, wait. It wasn't hard, because men like Callum always reveal themselves. And sure enough, one afternoon, a cream-colored envelope landed in my mailbox, postmarked San Francisco. Inside, a baby shower invitation. His second child with Lauren. "You're invited to celebrate the arrival of baby Whitaker. Let's toast to new beginnings. No drama, just joy." Joy? He wanted joy? After gaslighting me into silence, sabotaging my body, stealing my company, and writing me out of history? No, you don't get joy without consequence. I didn't RSVP. Not yet. Instead, I printed the invitation, folded it, slipped it into my folder, right next to his clinic signature and the falsified ovulation calendar. Because Callum thought this was just another photo op, another chance to display his new life. But what he didn't know What he still doesn't know is that I was coming. Not with a meltdown, not with accusations, not with drama. I was coming with receipts, and witnesses, and legal documents, and truth. In our final strategy meeting before the baby shower, my attorney, Melissa, leaned across the table. "You understand what you're doing, right?" she asked. "This could go nuclear." I nodded. "Then why now?" she pressed. I looked her in the eye. "Because this isn't just about him anymore. It's about every woman who's ever been blamed for someone else's damage." Grayson was quiet in the car that night. He'd supported every step, but he wasn't naive. "Are you sure you want to go?" he asked gently. I looked in the back seat. Amelie was asleep. Leo was counting stars on the window. "Yes," I said. "I want him to see exactly what he threw away. And I want the world to see what he tried to destroy, thriving." Callum built his reputation by pretending I disappeared. But I hadn't disappeared. I had evolved. And he was about to see the version of me that didn't beg, but burned bright enough to leave scars. The second I stepped into the ballroom, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. I didn't announce myself. I didn't need to. People recognized me the moment I walked through the double doors of the Whitmore Country Club. High heels clicking on polished marble, a white dress that screamed power, not purity, and 2 toddlers holding my hands in matching linen. The room went silent. Every head turned. Every drink paused midair. Every shallow smile froze. And Callum? He choked on his champagne. Lauren saw me next. She was surrounded by pastel balloons, a custom Baby Whittaker sign behind her, and a very curated group of women cooing over her bump. She blinked twice. Then panic. Then rage. I kept walking. My daughter Amelie gripped my left hand, Leo my right. They were calm, curious, confident. They had no idea they were walking into the most important moment of my life. But I knew, and I came ready. A ripple passed through the crowd. "Is that Celeste Morgan? She looks... Wait, are those her kids? They're beautiful. She looks expensive." Correct on all counts. Grayson followed behind, hands in pockets, relaxed, deadly, wearing the kind of navy suit that whispers old money and a watch that could cover the down payment on this entire venue. Callum's eyes darted between us. I saw the moment it hit him. Not just that I was there, but that I had already won. He made his move. "Celeste," he said, forcing a smile. "What a surprise." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "You invited me." He laughed awkwardly. "Well, I mean, Lauren wanted to be polite. It's, water under the bridge, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. The bridge you burned now has a name, a net worth, and a twin stroller." Lauren stepped forward. "We really didn't expect you to come," she said, glancing nervously around. "I'm sure you didn't," I replied. "Most people don't expect ghosts to walk back in." "Mommy, where's the cake?" Amelie asked sweetly. "Soon, baby," I said, crouching to her level. "Mommy has one more thing to deliver first." I stood and turned to face the crowd. Half were people I once knew. Half were people who only knew his version of the story. Time to fix that. "Thank you all for welcoming me today," I began, voice calm, eyes steady. I wasn't sure I would come. But then I remembered something Callum once told me. I turned to him. "You said the past doesn't matter if people don't remember it. So I came to help them remember." Callum stiffened. Lauren paled. I reached into my purse and pulled out a slim black folder. It clicked when I opened it. Sharp. Surgical. For those who don't know me, I'm Celeste Morgan. I'm Callum's ex-wife. We were married for 8 years. Tried to have children for 3 of them. During that time, I underwent 11 rounds of fertility treatments, hormone injections, surgical procedures, emotional devastation. The crowd held still. I was told I was infertile, that I was the problem, that Callum was the patient husband supporting me. I looked at him again. But that wasn't true. Callum had my test results for years. He knew my fertility was perfectly healthy, and he hid it. Gasps, shifting feet, Whispers, I continued. Not only that, he also falsified ovulation tracking, manipulated timing, controlled access to medical data, sabotaged our chances of conceiving while making me believe I was broken. A hand went to someone's mouth in the back row, and while I cried over failed IVF, he told his family I was emotionally unstable, that I had lost myself to motherhood dreams. Then he left, for her. Lauren flinched, which would have been fine if it ended there. I stepped forward, but it didn't. He rewrote the story, told everyone I couldn't have children, that I wasn't strong enough, that I was bitter. So I disappeared for a while. I looked around the room. But I didn't break, I rebuilt. Grayson stepped beside me now. Silent, solid. I married a man who didn't need to lie to love me, and I gave birth to twins, naturally, easily, beautifully. Lauren whispered something to Callum. He didn't respond. Just stood there, frozen. I'm not here for drama, I said softly. I'm here for truth. I handed the folder to one of the guests, an older woman I recognized as Callum's aunt. She opened it. Inside, fertility reports, lab tests, signed notes, time-stamped records, legal affidavits. All real, all damning. I crouched again beside my daughter. Okay, sweetheart, now we can get cake. We walked toward the dessert table. No one stopped us. Callum wanted me to show up broken, desperate. He thought I'd come to cry. Instead, I came to testify. And the look on his face? That was sweeter than any cake in the room. Callum didn't chase after me. Not when I walked out of the ballroom. Not when Grayson lifted Leo into his car seat. Not even when Amelie waved goodbye, asking if Daddy's friend was okay. He just stood there, in silence, in the wreckage of a narrative he no longer controlled. By the next morning, the whispers had turned into headlines. I hadn't posted anything, but the truth didn't need hashtags. A single blurry video, taken by someone's husband in the back corner, captured everything. My calm voice, the folder, Callum's face as I laid out the facts. By noon, it was on Twitter. By 5 p.m., it was on TikTok. By midnight, it had reached LinkedIn. What happens when a billionaire gaslights his wife, and she comes back with receipts? I didn't comment. I didn't need to, because other women started speaking. Callum's ex-assistant posted a thread about how she was forced to schedule wellness check appointments for Celeste behind her back. A former investor said he once heard Callum say, "You have to break a woman to keep her predictable." Another woman, anonymous but powerful, wrote, "I spent a year believing I was infertile. Then I found out my partner had been secretly taking testosterone. Thank you, Celeste, for reminding us to check the math." Modula's board issued a statement. "We were unaware of the personal misconduct alleged against our CEO. The board takes these matters seriously and will begin an independent review." Translation? We're buying time until we figure out how deep this goes. Spoiler, it went deep. Lauren deleted all her social media. Her sister, however, did not. She posted a photo from the shower. Caption: "Turns out the ex-wife wasn't crazy, she was just right. I received over 3,000 emails in 72 hours. Some were apologies from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were inquiries, publishers, podcast hosts, producers. Some were just women, sharing their pain, their confusion, their rage, their gratitude. I read every single one, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a cautionary tale. I felt like a mirror, reflecting what so many others had buried. Callum stepped down from Modula 2 weeks later, not because he was brave, because the board gave him a choice: resign quietly or be removed publicly. He chose quiet. Typical. A few days after that, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter. In Callum's handwriting. No apology, no explanation. Just 5 words. "You destroyed everything I built." I folded it once, twice, then burned it. Because here's the truth. I didn't destroy anything. I just told the truth. It was his lie that built the empire. And it was the truth that brought it down. People think vindication is loud, that it's a mic drop, a punchline. But the real victory? It's quiet. It's when you tuck your kids in at night, knowing they'll never question their worth the way you once did. It's when your partner touches your hand and doesn't ask, "Are you okay?" Because they already know you are. It's when your story no longer hurts to tell, because it's yours again. Owned, not borrowed, not distorted. I took one interview, just one, with a small podcast for women rebuilding after betrayal. The host asked me, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, the version of you crying on the bathroom floor, what would you say? I paused, then answered, he didn't break you, he blinded you. And you, darling, you're the kind of woman who rebuilds with her eyes open. Callum had power, but I had truth. And when truth shows up, calm, prepared, undeniable, even billionaires start running out of places to hide. It's been 18 months since the baby shower, since the moment I stood in that country club and told the truth. And in that time, life has grown. Wild, unpredictable, and more beautiful than I imagined. Amelie loves painting. Leo refuses to nap unless someone is singing. Grayson makes pancakes every Sunday. Burnt on one side, perfect on the other. And somehow, that's exactly what I needed. Something that isn't flawless, but full of love. Our home doesn't look like a magazine spread. It looks like we live here. And we do, fully, finally. People ask me if I'm still angry. My answer? No, I'm not angry anymore. Because anger is too small for the life I've built. What I feel now is something bigger. Peace, pride, and yes, power. Not the kind you flex to intimidate. The kind you wear like skin. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything because it has nothing left to hide. Sometimes I catch women watching me when I speak at events. They tilt their heads like they're trying to figure out what it is about me that feels familiar. And I want to say, it's not me you recognize. It's the version of you that you buried. She's still in there, and she wants out. I don't tell people how to heal. Healing isn't a checklist. It's not a formula. It's not about being unbroken. Sometimes, it's about letting the cracks stay open just enough to let the light in. Callum moved to London. Last I heard, he's trying to launch another company. A few investors still call me for background. I never badmouth him. I don't need to. The facts speak for themselves now. And if they don't, then they're not the kind of people I want to do business with anyway. Lauren? I don't know. I don't check. She was never the villain. Just another woman sold a version of a man who didn't exist. I hope she got out. Or got strong. Or both. People say I won. I don't think of it that way. This wasn't a competition. This was survival. And now, it's creation. I'm not just rebuilding my life. I'm designing it. On my terms. In my voice. With people who see me fully, not just functionally. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that being underestimated is painful. But being redefined? That's power. Callum thought he was writing me out of the script. But he didn't know that I had a pen, too. And so I'll end with this. To the woman watching this who's been made to feel small. To the woman who was told she was the problem. To the woman who thinks it's too late to rewrite the story. It's not. If anything, you're just getting to the good part. Because sometimes the best chapters start when someone else tries to close the book. And the most powerful revenge is living so loudly they can't pretend you're gone.